Ding dong, mailbag time. We got questions from you. If you have questions for Attacking Third for any of us, let us know in the chat on YouTube, at social media, across any platform at Attacking Third. Hit us up. Leave comments and replies with your questions. Our producer, Mark, does a great job of compiling them all, and then we get to answer them. Question number one. Let's dive in. This is from Groovy Goalie 1996. What a sick name. Love that one.
Nice.
Groovy Goalie asks, should the NWSL season calendar align with international calendars? Dee, you've played for both. I'm going to you first. Should it align?
No. It's too cold. It is so cold. I was talking to one of my good friends that plays in France right now, and she's like, this is terrible. We're going to go play in the snow. We don't even know if they can clear the fields off in time for us to play because of how much snow is going on. I like that there's the calendar as it is. You can have players that go on loan to both teams. Or seeing players like Jessica Silva who are going to come play in the NWSL for a part of the season and then go back to Europe. So I like that there's the opportunity to do both. And I don't want it condensed to the European calendar. I don't think it works for a lot of the markets here anyways.
Do you prefer playing in the heat of the summer of Houston?
Yes, I would take that 1,000 times over trying to run through the snow and I can't feel my feet and it hurts to inhale air. Think of Denver and Utah.
I'm sorry, that cold?
Like, absolutely not.
When you get to the point where you feel like you're running on glass because like your toes are so cold that when you kick a ball, you're like, I'm pretty sure half my foot is gone. That's just a certain pain that I can't describe to normal humans. Like,
yeah, it's chilly.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. I think there's also like, this is a really good example, and I don't know if people have actually thought of this, but like for me, like the whole international calendar question is also just like another one of those examples of the differences of resources between like men's professional football and women's professional football. Like Darian alluded to some of those things as well. Like if there's like a crazy snowy type of weather that could potentially, affect a game in some capacity for, Chelsea versus Arsenal on the men's side of things in the Premier League, like I would imagine that the resources to help clear a field and like get things in order are going to be like not even a question. That probably doesn't exist in if we're talking about Chelsea versus Arsenal, like in Women's Super League. Like it's just different. Like it's again one of these very glaringly obvious things, and it's just like conceptually it's like pivot to the international calendar because that's how things are done. Like sure, but the women's game is still growing. It's still trying to evolve. And that includes the resources that come into play when we are talking about how the planet Earth is actually changing as well, because it's getting colder in some places. Lisa mentioning getting really hot in Houston during the summer. But in terms of the scales tipping in one way or the other, it's like maybe for the women's game, they pivot to different calendar versus staying on the international calendar.
Yeah. I don't know if that'll happen. I could see the NWSL going to the international calendar. I could see that happening just as the way that they're trying to go as a league in that direction. I don't know if that's the best idea, but hey, we'll see. Okay. Why do you think rosters are seeing so much turnover this offseason in the NWSL? What's happening? Sandra, do you know this one?
I don't know if I know this one, but for me, like when I see the roster turnover, for me, it's just sort of a sign of just like the changing landscape of NWSL specifically. Like the concept of free agency culture is something that is still very, very new in NWSL. Free agency only got introduced a couple of seasons ago. And now there's this new iteration of it where it's not getting rolled out in tiers. It's not going to matter how many years of service you have in the league. It's if you're on a contract and you're able to negotiate after fulfilling your contract, guess what? You're a free agent. So it doesn't matter. There's no more draft. You are a free agent. You're able to navigate the trajectory of your career. So when it comes to turnover, for me, it's just kind of a natural progression of things. I don't know how much progression we do have because something else that hasn't kind of come into play with the concept of like a free agency market or a transfer market in NWSL specifically is that it's been kind of dry. Like, let's be real here. The offseason's been kind of dry. That it's not been like the crazy chaotic kind of news and movements that we thought it would be. But I know folks that they're maybe looking at teams that are just like, oh, there's so much turnover. I think we talked about Gotham not too long ago. Seattle just announced a slew of farewells and thank you for your service to a number of their free agents. And that again, I think that's just a symbol of the natural progression of like introducing free agency to NWSL. I don't think, especially if you've been following this league for a very, very long time since its inaugural season, that's new to you. It's a new feeling, it's a new look, it's a new vibe. And I think it's going to take a little while to maybe get adjusted to that. I think the concept of like, having a player be on a team for, 8+ years is maybe not going to be something that is like we see on the regular in NWSL, especially with some of the contracts that we have seen come out of free agency at this point. They're anywhere from 1-year deals with an option to 4-year deals with an option. So I think it's just going to take a little bit of catching up in terms of the normalcy of it all. Eventually, we're going to be looking at this as just sort of kind of normal sports business for the league.
I think people need to consider as well, when you have players that all now have free agency, you have players that are not taking less than a couple $100,000. So if teams are wanting to acquire players like that, you then have to offload some players to then make room for money. You can bring in younger players that are, happy to break into the pro game, that will take a lot less, maybe take the league minimum to just come join the team and try to get playing time, try to develop into the professional world, and elevate their game. But you need players that define your style of play, that you can really build your team around. I think we're seeing that with like a Seattle. How many players have they offloaded now? And I would think that's to help for a player like Lynn Williams and whoever else they're trying to bring on, because they had such a crap season this last year. So because these big players are making moves, like even a Yasmin Ryan going to Houston, there has to be so many other moves to then fit in and fill where money's going, what money's left, how much money you need to bring in that can get players that help define what type of team you're going to be and play like the following year. So I think some players' moves have an effect on other players and their ability to, I know it's a mutual conversation of, do you want to be here? But you're not there to sit on the bench. No person, at least how I'm thinking about playing, wants to go sign for a team that they're going to say, well, you're on the team, but we're not going to travel you. You're not going to play in games. You probably won't dress most of the time unless we have a lot of injuries or there's an international tournament. What do you want to do? That's why I think we're seeing a lot of movement. And I think we're going to continue to see a lot before the window closes.
Yep.
It's almost like those middle tier players, role players on teams that have made probably decent money over the last season or two are now going to say, okay, is this a decision for me? And you're exactly right, Dee. Coaches are going to say, okay, well, we could pay a rookie half of what we're paying this middle tier player that is going to be way more complacent in not playing or not getting a lot of time. And we're going to be able to grow and mold them into the type of player that we need for this team. It's different. It's a whole new landscape that we're seeing in NWSL. And frankly, with the elimination of the draft, with the college game changing so much due to the elimination of the draft and the accessibility of players ages 14, 15, and 18 to go play professionally, the entire women's football landscape is changing from youth levels all the way up until pros. And this is just kind of the tip of the iceberg, what we're seeing this year in free agency and trades and transfers. Okay, last question for us to roll out this segment. Question number 4 from 2 Feet in 23. This one is about a new coaching hire in the NWSL. 2 Feet in 23 says, what were your initial reactions to the Houston Dash naming Fabrice Gautrat as head coach? So Fabrice Gautrat named as head coach of the Houston Dash. I'm going to say that I like that this has a head coach that is coming from within NWSL. Gautrat was an assistant coach at North Carolina. He's been around the league for a long time. He understands how the league is played, the players in the league. He understands what he's getting himself into at Houston. It's not the situation where you have a coach coming in from overseas and you're saying, hey, you're going to take this team. But he's also never been a head coach before. And that's a lot of work to have to do at Houston. What did you guys think of this naming of head coach?
It's not Landon Donovan, so that's interesting. And it also means the pendulum. It also for me means the pendulum. It means the pendulum has swung the complete opposite way, I think, for me. Yeah. If you're Houston, I mean, you alluded to it a little bit there, Lisa. You're just like, this is an NWSL type of coach. They rolled the dice with Fran Alonso. It did not work out. And so when their pendulum swung one way. Now that it didn't work out, it's completely gone back the other way. So maybe not too surprising in that sense when I kind of narrow the lens in that way, where it's like, okay, maybe they want to try to get back to something that could work for them. And maybe it's making sure that they go out, get a coach that has been around the league, that understands kind of the, week in, week out kind of intricacies of running an NWSL club. So pendulum the other way, and the jury's out. This is his first head coaching gig in this league. Got to see how it looks.
It's very high risk, high reward, in my opinion, for him, not for Houston. Houston, well done. I think that when you have the opportunity to hire from within someone who's dedicated their time, energy, football, education around the women's game specifically, and have done it for quite some time, I think that's always a win. My initial reaction was like, oh God, like, why would you want to do that to yourself? And I understand there are only so many head coaching positions, and perhaps the opportunity presented and he's ready and he feels that he's ready. But that's such a big bite of a very big apple to take on with your first tenure as a head coach. I wish him well. I hope that they do turn this around and succeed. I just think that given what we know of the history, even more recently, that's going to be an interesting task.
I have faith. I think it's promising. New GM. They have a coach who's experienced in the league. He's coached under Sean Nahas. Now, the way that Sean trains and the tight ship he runs with this, how they train, how they show up, how professional it is, it's always intense. It's short, quick, boom, you're in and out of the game plan. You know exactly what your roles are no matter where you are on the field. Houston needs a coach like that. I don't think you work underneath Sean Nahas for a long time unless you're also bought into that mindset, that way of training. So I love this for Houston. I think this is hopefully the massive reset that this team needs. And if it's not, go to Austin. But I'm really excited to see what this coach is going to do, especially with the new GM, the players are going to bring in, how they're going to up the ante and just make this another back to being a respectable NWSL team where players actually want to go play. And it's not a threat of your career kind of halting to go play for Houston for a year.
Guys, thanks for your questions. Always, if you got questions for the A3 crew, let us know across socials at Attacking Third, on YouTube, in our chat. Send them to us, carrier, pigeon, whatever you want. We'll get them and we will answer them. Thanks, everyone.